NetherRealm has designed some pretty neat ideas into the moveset of Captain Cold. He can create walls of ice to fend off against projectile attacks, and depending on what gear he has equipped, he can create air platforms and perform an air dash. This type of mobility could fix a lot of problems from the first Injustice. Games like the King of Fighters tend to heavily rely on hand-to-hand combat instead of projectiles, partially because everyone can run, roll dodge, hop, and super jump. And as you might imagine, these movement options make projectiles a non-issue most of the time. A problem in the first Injustice was the lack of proper movement options. It meant that not only were projectiles a bother, it also meant that something faster than a fireball, like say gunshots for example, had a bit of an extra edge, whereas in other fighting games any character has the tools to deal with it. Injustice 1 allowed any character to become a powerhouse as long as they had a good ranged game or long range normals combined with a strong approach that leads into high damage combo. Superman, for example, had his forward 2-3 and his hit vision. Wonder Woman had an air dash and her lasso. Black Adam had access to a dive kick and a thunder strike. And Killer Frost had a slide and two kind of projectiles. On the gameplay side, the main draw of Injustice 2 for me is that now every other character has been given a decent approach. Joker and Grodd charge ahead while Wonder Woman shields herself and Black Canary dodges while moving forward. This should go a long way into mitigating the strong range game from the first game. Deathstroke's melee mix-ups were a complementary tool because all he needed to dominate the online was his high guns, low guns, air guns, overhead guns, and the kind of useless anti-air guns. The only thing he was really missing was an air-to-ground ranged attack, which instead was Superman's thing. And if you want to see how strong this was, just look at Evolution 2013. Link in the description. It's not so much that it doesn't take skill, but that in addition to feeling nothing like a comic book fight or an adaptation, there was no real effective counter for it in the game. Bullets and even hit vision are rarely elements to take into account in the best fights DC has to offer. In the comics and adaptations, characters like Superman, Deathstroke, Shazam and Black Adam, among others, tend to fight up close and personal, and they keep their ranged options for special case scenarios. Even Deadshot has a few glorious brawls to his name, as do ring users Sinestro and Hal Jordan. And Mr. Omega Beams himself, Darkseid tends to get his hands dirty in his best moments. So it's great to see NetherRealm make sure to correct some of the most flawed fundamentals in the game. They even went so far as to remove Deathstroke, ensuring that everybody's range game was easy to react to. Oh, right, Floyd Lawton. Well, I guess if we're going to have someone with a strong range game, it should be Deadshot. Show me your moves. Hey, wait a second. This looks kinda familiar. There's the quick shot, there's the low shot, there's the air guns, there's the rifle. How about something a little bit more creative? Deadshot here is supposed to be a trick shot. Oh, well, yeah, I guess that works. In the comics, Deadshot is a show-off trickshot marksman. He's often called the world's greatest sniper. You know, the guy in the Suicide Squad, deadliest 4,000 meters, knows the use of every firearm in existence. Why is he sharing moves with Deathstroke again? Slade Wilson here is the result of a super soldier experiment gone awry, and he has taken Batman on in hand-to-hand combat. There is zero canonical reason these two guys should be even slightly similar. Maybe we'll discover some pretty cool mechanics once we actually get to play the game. Or maybe my expectations are just way too high. But if I wanted to play a game with Deathstroke, I'd just get my copy of Injustice and patch it to the current version. I know NetherRealm can do better than this. Did you see the trailer for Captain Cold and Black Canary? I mean, they absolutely nailed those characters. Okay. NetherRealm, are you listening? Here's an idea for a truly unique Deadshot. Make his iconic ricochet shot his straight and give it a cooldown. Make it so that while you're holding the shot, pressing down or back or jumping changes the bullet's initial trajectory like Green Arrow straight does, thus requiring the player to aim the damn thing properly. So boom, release the trade button and Deadshot fires a bouncing bullet. If this elaborate, relatively slow shot ricochets even once before hitting, it floats the target and increases the hit stun of his next couple special, so that only if the ricochet hits, then Deadshot can follow up with a barrage from half a screen away. The point would be to have the Deadshot player learn to aim to where the opponent is going to be when the ricochet finally lands, and reward them with a lot of extra damage for actually taking the time to aim the shot. Doesn't that sound a lot more interesting than what we have here? And more importantly, doesn't it sound more like something Deadshot would do, using an impossible shot angle that is available only to him, and the also unique ability to actually follow up on them would truly make Deadshot the absolute zoner in the game, which is only fitting for someone whose title is the world's greatest sniper. You heard it here first, folks. All I'm saying is there is so much more they could do with Deadshot than to take half of Deathstroke moveset and add Oliver's streak arrows. I mean, it is kind of cool that he has shots that do damage to the super meter, but come on, that's it, you're selling this guy short. Alright, now that we're done with Deadshot, there's a very special lady that we have to talk about. But first, she's Harley Quinn. Harley Straight in the original Injustice was... Anybody remember what Harley Straight was? Oh yeah, she did a random buff. Yeah, how could I forget that? Maybe because it never turned the tables on the match online? Hell, did any of the professional Harley players ever use that? For Injustice 2, that trait got changed to the hyenas because random traits are horrible.
She also is a legacy character. She looks even better with her new trait. It's no longer that it's RNG, which means random number generator, because that's literally what her trait was in the last game, making her sometimes get the wrong option.
If there's something a professional player demands of his character moveset, it's reliability. NetherRealm changed Harley's trait because they knew it was a horrible idea. So why in the name of Zeus has Miss Prince been given a new trait that is a random buff? Diana's new trait is a blessing which has one of 5 random effects.
Her character power is no longer switching, she has a brand new one, just like Harley.
Sure.
And it is a blessing from the god. You hit the character power button, and she gets a buff. And she has 5 different buffs that she can get, and it's randomly chosen. She has 5 different buffs that she can get, and it's randomly chosen.
RNG, which means random number generator, because that's literally what her trait was in the last game, making her sometimes get the wrong option. She looks like she has
I will not tolerate this!
She has her boots, which is one of the most interesting. This actually gives her access to her air dash.
Wait. What did you just say?
Interesting. This actually gives her access to her air dash.
right.
Her air dash is assigned on a random buff? Do you remember what I said about mobility just a while ago? When you're using Wonder Woman and Darkseid is there spamming his low beams, your defenses are going to fail. So you really need your air dash to win you the match. So you press the trade button and you get the lasso and you lose the f***ing match. I kind of get what they are going for here, that they want the player to have enough experience with Wonder Woman that they can take any random advantage and use it to turn the tables. But as anyone good enough to get into a tournament will tell you, when you're fighting, your every move is already a calculated risk. Pressing a button that has a 20% chance of giving you the buff you want, and an 80% chance of screwing you over is next to useless. This could have been prevented very easily. Blazblue uses a very similar button setup as Injustice. There is a button for light attacks, another for medium attacks, and one for heavy strikes. While there is another button reserved for a drive, which is the same thing as a trait. What Blazblue does is assign each different function of a drive to a different directional input. So for example, Jin Kisaragi here has a trait called Frostbite that freezes his opponents on contact. He can use the trait button with no directional input to throw out a forward strike of ice, or do it while crouching to make it only hit on long range. Hold forward for a slower strike with a better hit stun, or he can also use it while jumping for a combo extender that also works for cross-ups. Mastery over this ability is not only useful, it's essential. Every combo, every pressure mix-up, every defensive maneuver an experienced Jin player can pull off requires precise use of this ability. Can you imagine how utterly useless he would be if every time he tried his trait one of 4 random attacks came up? Maybe he'd be fine for casual play, but you'll never see him in a tournament or fighting anything other than newbies online. In the exact same manner, NetherRealm Studios could easily make Wonder Woman's trait reliable. Change it so pressing it while crouching boosts the bracelets, for example. Forward blesses her offensive capabilities, press while holding back to activate the shield, and neutral or up to enable her to air dash. And voila, trait fixed! It's going to take more balancing, but it's better than Diana having a useless trait. I still don't think she ever had a good trait in the series. I mean, have you ever seen her fight in the animation? If I had never seen Injustice gameplay of Wonder Woman, I would personally assume she's the grappler of the game. Thinking about it, I would guess Superman would be the basic all-rounder character, while Batman would require a little bit more planning. While the warrior with super strength and 1,000 years of training would of course use some grapples. And yes, I know we already have Swamp Thing, and Cheetah, and Bane. But we have like 30 characters, you can't afford to have 4 grapplers. Especially since we don't have Grundy anymore. And Grundy did it, so I'm sure NetherRealm can have another character do it. There's plenty of games that do grappling right. One of her throws could leave the opponent open for a free combo, another one could deal damage and then leave the opponent standing for another mix-up, another could work just on crouching opponents, and then she could have a risky meter burn one that just does a ton of damage. But maybe it can happen by the time of Injustice 3, and if you like how any of that sounds, then please make sure this video reaches NetherRealm. Okay, look. I know I'm sounding overly negative over a game that is a sequel to one of my all-time favorites. I just have high expectations. They absolutely nailed Black Canary, so I want them to get Diana right too. They also did an amazing job with Captain Cold, with Ivy, and they're representing Swamp Thing of all things. Even Rod Scarecrow looks good. Scarecrow! So it's crushingly disappointing to look at her trait or at Deadshot in general, and I just want every fighter to be a well-designed representation of a DC character. This is the only DC competitive game we have. Of course any hardcore fan is going to be demanding, because I know they have the potential to exceed our expectations. For example, did you see what they did to the freaking Flash, man? Okay, now we're talking my kind of business. The Flash has come up on Injustice 1 with some welcome changes. Back then he was a special case because while everyone else had a projectile, Flash was the projectile. It looked weird as all hell, but it gave him an appropriately lightning fast approach. His pressure was amazing too, since not only did he have frame advantage, but also the only command dash in the game. I mean, you see this, he's actually running. Not only that, but his trait slowed down time, allowing for impossible combos higher than any other character pull off, at the cost of taking his ability to block. All of this combined, and a good Flash player could finish off a fight faster than any other character in the game. So how could NetherRealm possibly add to his wonderful moveset? Well, his combo launcher apparently got nerfed and is now Punisher. But now he has at least one new combo into Flying Kick that has advantage on block. And now he has an anti-air meter burn combo start, an absolutely fantastic multi-punch finisher, and a long-range quick hit that launches on meter burn. Do you remember what I was saying earlier about the strong approach? The one bit I'm not crazy about is the return of this garbage dodge. Hey, you know what the Flash and Catwoman have in common? Yeah, they both had a dodge that you had forgotten even existed. Okay, let's be fair. You could use it to dodge through Green Arrow's unblockable super or through the stage hazards, which were all unblockable for some dumb reason. But in most practical situations you'd be better off actually blocking the move and then punishing. Black Canary's dodge is great because it moves you closer to the opponent. This does not, so I hope it got buffed in some way. But other than the dodge, he really seems like a better designed character this time around. And he wasn't even bad in the first Injustice. Unlike, say, Lex Luthor, nobody could really eat the Flash alive back then. Well, maybe the DLC characters. Alright, we haven't talked about the DLC characters. Okay. Stay tuned folks, we still have a lot to talk about.